Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Fromme, and today we are going to talk about getting ready for fall sewing. I know it's August here, however, fall is right around the corner. All of the retail stores are putting out the fall decorations, and I'm seeing costume fabric in the stores, and kids are getting ready to plan their Halloween costumes. So it's time to get your sewing room ready to go. I know over the summer, many other things may have taken up your time and you haven't sewn as much. So, a little organization can go a long way in ensuring that you have more time to sew this fall. So, let's get started. Well, today I have for you a project. We are going to make some pattern weights today, along with talking about ways to organize your space. So let's get started with how I created these pattern weights. I'm going to switch you over quickly to the software just so you can see what I created here. All right. And I've set up my software screen with our 80 by 80 hoop. That's just a small 3-inch, about 3-inch hoop, a little bit, maybe a little bit bigger than 3 inches, but just a small workspace. Now, I like working with a smaller workspace when I'm designing something small so that I don't get too large. And first off, I want to create a pattern weight with some fun decoration on it. So I'm going to go into my super designs and look for some sewing themed designs. So I'll just type in sewing in super designs and show you the drop down here. And I can see I have quite a few different little sewing type of designs I could incorporate into my project. When I switch back the camera to my machine camera, you can see some of the weights I've already created using some of these super designs. But I'm going to take just this pin cushion here. And a reason why I like to use super designs is because they can be resized or digitized essentially on the fly. That means that I can set the size I want for my finished design. Every super design does have a default size it starts at, but you can make them larger or smaller. I'm going to take this pin cushion down to 40 millimeters and just click apply. Put it right in the center of my workspace. Now my pattern weight's going to be about the size of this hoop. So I have a little bit more space to work with. So I think I'll add a frame. I just want to create something a little bit more exciting. And I kind of like the candle wicking shields. They kind of remind me of little pinheads. So I went to frames and I selected the round candle wicking frame, and I'm just going to click apply, leaving all the settings as is. And there I go. I have a nice little frame of candle wicking stitches surrounding my pin cushion. Now I want to make this just a tad more interesting. I was playing with this earlier. I wanted a square around my circle. However, there's no square in my options, but there is a square on point essentially. So I'm going to work with that. Again, selecting that. However, this time I don't have my design selected because I want to be able to work with that frame independently. And I'm going to choose to not have it grouped. Okay. So let me apply that. And from here, you can see I have green squares on my frame and it's outside my hoop. So I'm just going to bring this down. Whoops. I right-clicked when I should have left-clicked. I apologize. And I'm just going to play with this a bit more, reshaping it how I like it to be shaped. And then if I come back to my home tab, I do have a quick center and hoop icon that will help me get that the way I want it. So that just creates an interesting little design that I can use for my pin cushion, or for my pattern weight rather. It's pin cushion on a pattern weight. All right, so that's just one quick way you can create a design. Don't be afraid to explore frames and super designs. And within frames, we even have like little flourishes. So we have some fun little accents that you could create. It's fun to create little mini designs. Now, if you'd like to see, I actually did this as a project in a hoop, but you can certainly make a pattern weight in the sewing mode as well. To do a pattern, to create this in the hoop, I went over to my Create tab and I went into my digitizing. I'll just wait for that to open up fully. And I selected the Start a New Design with No Picture. All I'm digitizing is a square, so I don't need a picture to digitize a square. I am keeping with my 80 by 80 millimeter hoop and click Finish. Now I preset my grid to be at 5 millimeters because I wanted to use that as a reference point. And I'm going to start my first one with Quick Create. So Quick Create will let me choose something as simple as just a running stitch. So I'm not going to use a fill. I just want to digitize a running stitch, and I just want to digitize a square. So we have these quick shapes that we can use in digitizing. Change it to shape 3, and then click on the shape. And lo and behold, I have suddenly have a square here. Now I'm just going to expand my square using the blue corner points. I'm coming out to within 1 grid of my corner. Again, this is a size I predetermined I wanted to use. There we go. And then I right click and I have now created a running stitch of a square. Very simple, very quick. Then I want to add a color change because this way I can't, I don't have to worry about anything getting color sorted together. So I like to kind of protect my things and do it that way. And I wanted to create another square that will be how I lay my fabric onto my embroidery and turn it inside out. So I don't want a complete square. I need to leave an opening for turning. So instead, I'm going to go over to Point Create and choose, I want the triple stitch. I want this to be nice and strong. And then I click on Create Area or Line. I'm going to start in about 3 grids. So I have a corner to turn, maybe about 3.5-ish grids. And I'm just going to click 1 point and come into my corner. Oops. And by holding down my Shift key as I click, I will get a nice square corner. So I held down Shift as I come across to my corners, come up here to this corner, and I want my stitching to stop about here. And I will correct this circle by clicking on my Shift key. Again, right click. I've just digitized my fabric, my step rather, that will hold my backing fabric in place. This will make more sense to you probably when I stitch this out, which we're going to see stitched out in just a couple of minutes. Okay. So I've just saved, I just have this in digitizing and I can link back to my embroidery. So I'm going to come back here to my embroidery and click on Finish. And you can see that I have in my film strip, I have my original pincushion that I did. I have my extra square, which, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't like that so much. So I'm going to remove that extra square just by clicking on Delete. And then I have my assembly for my In the Hoop pincushion. Now, I want color 1 of what I just digitized, that blue color, to stitch first. That's going to provide the outline. And then I want my embroidery to stitch second, the pincushion. And then I want the orange stitching, this last running stitch that's going to hold it together. That's a triple stitch rather. I want that to stitch last. So in order to quickly change it, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but this is just a quick way you can do it. I'm going to first off combine my design, and then I'm going to take the design over to modify, because there's a really nice way to change the sequence of stitching in modify. On the right hand side, you see the design panel, and you see all my colors for my candle wicking frame and my pin cushion. And then I have the color for the first frame stitching and then the tack down stitching here. When you hover, the screen highlights what it is. Well, I want to move color 7 to be first. And when you're in modify using the design panel, there are these arrows right here that allow you to move a color up. So I'm just going to move that blue color all the way up. So now it will stitch first. Then I'll have my frame and my pin cushion. In fact, I may want to stitch that frame after my last color of my pin cushion. So I'm going to move that down and have my orange stitching last. Easy enough to pop back over to the home tab, and you'll see that my colors stay in the order that I put them in. So if I were to go to design player, and I will just play this through at a higher rate of speed, you can see that it's going to stitch that outline first, and then the middle design, and then my tack down. Okay, so I know that's just a very quick demo on how this is created, but I wanted to share with you how I created this in the in the software. So I'm going to come back to you here in just a moment, and let me do a quick camera change and see where we're at. There we are. Okay, so at the machine, I already have stitched, and this is a different design. I created a little super design from a little pink shirt. Let me get you a little bit of a closer view for you. There you go. And I've already stitched the first several colors of my design, and I'm ready to put the backing fabric on. I'm not sure how well it's defined, but there is a light yellow stitching here. That was my perimeter, and then my design. And I'm ready to stitch the last color choice, which is my frame going around. My backing fabric is a cotton fabric. I stitched my front of my weight on a cotton twill with a cutaway stabilizer. I really like this cutaway mesh stabilizer that we have. It's not terribly bulky, but it's very strong. And it adds a lot of body to something that will get a little bit of a wear and tear on it. So I like that mesh stabilizer for that purpose. I've put in a dark colored thread so you can see this better on camera. I would not use such a dark colored thread in real life, but I think it shows up a lot better. So I have placed my backing fabric right sides down over top my embroidery. And I know that it's going to fit. I cut it a little bit generous, because when you're doing things live, you never want to chance something. But that's the purpose of having this stitching line here, is to make sure that my cut fabric extends over that cut line. So this will just take about 1 minute to stitch around. And it is doing a triple stitch, so it'll be nice and strong. All right, that was pretty quick and easy, wasn't it? Oh, and I love when my machine sings to me afterwards. Alrighty, so we're going to come over here to my workspace so that we can continue our project here. Let me just get myself turned around for you. There we go. So this is what I just took off the hoop for my project. You can see my embroidery on the back side. So we'll just take this hoop off. Isn't this the cutest little hoop? I just love this little 80mm hoop. If you stitch on anything small, maybe you do doll clothes or do clothes for infants or toddlers, perfect size hoop just to not waste stabilizer, makes it a lot easier to hoop. Alrighty, so once we have our fabric removed from our hoop, we're going to cut it out. So I've already have a second sample with it trimmed around, and I want to show you just a bit more about trimming. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a zoom here so I can show you on the corners. When you turn something inside out and you have all this extra bulk that has to be folded inside, it's very helpful if you cut across the corner. Just taking a diagonal cut across there reduces how much bulk you have. Now I did leave a nice generous seam allowance. I don't need that any longer. I'm just going to trim down around all three sides. Again, cutting diagonally across that corner and cutting the bottom across. Now at the top end, where I have my stitches stopping here, I am going to go ahead and just cut almost to the stitching line on each side, and then take some of this extra bulk out by cutting across the corners. You can see I just did a step ahead. I went ahead and pressed my turn back just to make it a little bit faster for you, so I didn't have to have my iron set up as well. Okay, so a quick trim around. Maybe I trim this one just a bit more. Trim that all the way around. All right, so now we're going to turn this inside out. So I find that if I find a corner and kind of wiggle that corner out with my thumb, I can easily get this turned inside out for you. All right, now, it's always tempting to take the point of your scissors and push it in to those corners to get that last little bit of the corner out. But scissors can be kind of damaging if you poke too hard. So I have found using a chopstick, that works really well. Now, I also have a bamboo point turner. You might be able to find one of those at your local dealer or your local quilt shop or fabric store. I absolutely love my little bamboo point turner. However, it is currently in my travel luggage, so it's not accessible to me today. So see how much easier that is to pop out those corners all the way around. And I got one more here to do, but I already have one completely turned inside out for you just to make things go a little quicker. So print on the back, on the front. Okay. Alrighty, so let me show you the next step in creating this. And because this is such a small design, you could easily create several in the hoop all at once. And that way you can speed up your assembly of your project. So now I borrowed a couple things from my kitchen. I borrowed a funnel and I borrowed just a disposable bowl because we need to stuff these pattern weights. And by the way, here's one of my pattern weights that I've made before. Has some buttons and thread on it. And here's one that you might recognize. This little thimble design was one of our super designs, as was the needle in the middle. But how did I get 6 thimbles so perfectly arranged? Well, I use the Encore feature within the software to do that. So just a quick and easy way to add more interest. And here's another one that I did some buttons and that needle. Pretty metallic thread. It's always nice for a little glimmer. And here I created just a little panel of motif using Quilt Block Wizard. I just created a mini quilt block, filled it with motif only, and I used the thread and the scissors. Those are some of our sewing stitches available on our machines. And they make a great, essentially, all over fabric. That's essentially what I did with those designs. Okay, back to the kitchen items. So we need to fill our weights with something, that has some stability to it. And there's a lot of different things you can use. Popular items would be using dried rice, dried beans, coffee beans, although coffee beans can get a little oily. So you might want to maybe double line your fabric. You wouldn't want to transfer any oil onto a project inadvertently. You could use lentils. There's a lot of different food things that you could use, but you can also get from your local craft store some of the plastic poly pellets. Okay, now my bag of poly pellets is a little bit brittle, so it's inside another Ziploc bag so that I can't make too big of a mess here. And let's see how good this works on camera, guys. So I have my finished, turned out little pattern weight, and I have my opening, and I'm going to take my funnel, and I'm holding this over my bowl here so that hopefully, if I make a mess, it won't be too bad to clean up. And then I can just take some poly pellets. I should have brought a scoop down with me. Whoops, there they go. They bounce around a lot. And just shake them down into my weight. And I have a fairly small funnel here. I'm going to grab a slightly larger funnel with a bigger opening, and that will speed things up. Again, just take a little at a time and kind of shake those down in. Now, I had a friend who used to make a little scrap bag catcher type thing with a pincushion attached, and she always made her little pincushion part out of sand. She filled it with sand, so she made an inner bag that was filled with sand, just playground sand, like sterilized sand, and then she would fill that, sew it up, and then put that filled bag inside of another bag. So that could be another option as well. Although I have not experimented with playground sand. So, all right, once you have your pellets in place, we could put a few more in here. However, for the sake of time, and I don't want to be spilling my pellets everywhere, I'm just going to clip that closed. And now we would switch our machine over to sewing mode and simply sew straight across there. If you are fussy, I'm sorry, if you wanted to, not see any stitching, by all means, you're welcome to get out that needle and thread and do a nice invisible stitch on there. But simple and easy to create a little in the hoop pattern weight. Okay, so just give me a minute to move these out of the way so I can't spill them during the rest of my time with you. There we go. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions. So let's see here. Oh, the machine I'm using, I happen to be using my Designer Epic 2 today. However, um, something like this can be created using any embroidery machine. And if you don't have an embroidery machine, it's okay. You don't need one. You can simply sew squares of fabric together and turn it inside out. Use some print fabric, or maybe even use some decorative stitches, much like this. Although this was done in the hoop, there'd be nothing stopping you from decorating a base fabric with some fun threads and decorative stitches and use that as your fabric. Your friends will be envious of you when they see how creative you can be. So that's the machine I'm using. And you're right. Whomever commented about being a quick gift, you might belong to a quilting guild or some sort of community organization where you give a little gift exchange at the holidays, or you have like a birthday club or something like that. What a great gift. Make several of these, put them in a little cellophane bag, decorate them with a ribbon, and what a nice, thoughtful gift. And just a review of some of the items you can use to fill the pattern weights. You could use rice, any sort of dried grocery item, rice, coffee beans, lentils, black beans. Probably I'd stay with the smaller beans rather than like a large dried lima bean. I would, for this project, I'd buy whatever was on sale or whatever, it gives you the most value for the money. But even a 1 pound bag of rice would make a lot of pattern weights. Oh, someone suggests to turn the project into designer cornhole bags. Well, that's a great thing. And you could certainly use the dried corn to stuff your pattern weight bags as well. So that's another great suggestion for filling it. Another suggestion is the crushed walnut shells, and that works well for pin cushions too. So absolutely, that's another great item that you can use to fill your pattern weights. Alrighty, so let's talk about some other things that you can do to organize your sewing space. I'm going to put this pattern weight aside so I can't lose any of its filler. And there are so many things that you can do to speed up your sewing and organize your sewing space. You don't have to have a lot of space to work with. You just have to be smart about using your space. So first off, I want to talk about your bobbins. So organizing your bobbins is something I find very, very helpful. I like these little bobbin rings. Many of our dealers sell them. You can find them in many retailers across the country. Just called a bobbin saver. I've seen them in different colors. I happen to have red and blue. And I have 2 different machines that I use, and they take 2 different bobbins. So I have my bobbins that are my group 7 machine. Those take those green bobbins. I have them in my blue ring. And then I have a red ring for the bobbins that fit my Designer Epic 2. And it would fit the Designer Ruby 90 or the Epic 95Q. Any of the bobbins that are the bigger blue bobbins. So having that separated just saves me time. I can just keep one by each machine that I'm using. I do have one more of the bobbin rings that has just bobbins with embroidery thread. So I have some of that, the 60 weight bobbin thread. And I like to, when I buy a spool of bobbin thread, if I have 6 or 7 empty bobbins, I'll go ahead and fill all my empty bobbins with my embroidery thread. Now, the bobbins do last quite a long time. The Epic bobbins hold 30% more than the green bobbins, so they do last a long time. So I keep a whole separate ring of just embroidery thread. So that again is another time saver for me. If you don't embroider, then you might just want to have bobbins filled with thread colors you use most often. If you do mending or repairs, you might use a lot of gray or taupe or red or blue, or maybe you need to hem school uniforms or work on things like that. I was a band uniform mom for 4 years, and so I always had bobbins and thread matched together that matched the band uniforms, because I was every Friday after a game or a performance, we would be fixing uniforms on Saturdays. So that was a big time saver for me. Other things that are great time savers are, if you don't have a machine that can fill your bobbin while you're embroidering, you might want to invest in a little bobbin winder. So this bobbin winder will wind both sizes of our Husqvarna Viking bobbins, and it can be plugged in, or it can work with batteries as well. So you could essentially take this on the road with you if you're one of those people that are so fortunate that you can travel with your machine and sew on your downtime. And this can be a big time saver for you if you can't fill bobbins while you're running your embroideries. You can do that separately. So that's a nice little time saver as well. I have found it very useful. It's also helpful to organize your projects as you go and your supplies. So I have just some little baskets. These little white baskets are real nice. I can keep threads for like a current project just out. It's, if I put the thread back in here, it saves it from it rolling around on the floor, getting knocked off my table, having to find it again. So my threads I just used for my project, I'm going to put back in here so they're nice and easy. Then I can just take a minute and put these threads away when I'm finished with the project. Use my basket again for my next set of threads. Whether it's sewing or embroidery, I like to do that. I like to have things handy. I don't always get to sit and sew for a long period of time. So I might have 15 minutes or maybe even a half an hour here and there. And if I keep my supplies all together, it really improves my the use of my time when I do have it. I also like to keep my needles handy at hand. So again, I just have a little white basket. Now this usually sits inside of a cabinet drawer. However, I brought it out for you to see how I store it. I keep my needle guide book right handy with my needles. All right. So I can reference it and look up anything I might need to find out about using a particular needle, or if I need to buy a different size twin needle, it tells me every size that's available. So I keep that little booklet right with my needles. And I also keep a spare tool, the gray tool that comes with your machine. You'll find that your dealer can order you extra. I have a spare one I keep with my needles because it just makes it so much easier when I go to change my needle if this is right with the needles. So that little hole, let's see if I can get that. There we go. That hole here is got a flat edge. So when you put your needle in there, it holds it steady for you as you put it in your machine. Okay. So I like that idea a lot. I already shared with you my Chinese chopstick tool. That is one of my favorite time saver tools, along with keeping a pair of serger tweezers, not just at my serger, but at my sewing machine. They can be great for turning corners or for holding a thread or grabbing a thread out of the way. So, now here I have one of our little rope bowls. This is a rope bowl that's wrapped in fabric. And I find these are very helpful, again, to keep near my machine with just whatever tool I might need. I was embroidering something with black bobbin thread earlier, so I had a black spare bobbin ready to roll. I had the foot I was using and an extra screwdriver and a couple extra of these. Can you tell I love this tool? Because I have 3 of them out here to show you. That's just one of my favorite tools. Okay. All right, so keeping your embroidery stabilizers organized is important too, and it'll save time. So I have a lot of stabilizers, and I have them, again, in a cabinet, but when I'm working on a project, I like to keep out the stabilizer I'm using. So just this little fabric basket I made, it's just got some embroideries featured around it. Let me push it back a little bit so you can see it better. Just has some different embroideries made with some piping and some foam in the sides to keep it stiffer. Just a great little place to stash stabilizers, or I can put, if it's a small hoop, I can just tuck that hoop in there to keep that organized as well. I like these little labels. They work. Remember those slap bracelets from like when you were a kid? They're kind of like that in that they conform to the size, but they have a place where you can write on what type of stabilizer it is, and then just wrap this around. And then the marker that comes with it, you can erase your word when you, like, maybe you run out of it and you don't repurchase that, you can reuse the labels for another project. I also keep the label for the stabilizer inside the tube in case I need to recall, like, what, is it one that I need to fuse, or is it water soluble, or any special instructions that I need to use that stabilizer. All right,